everyone, and thank you for letting me be here today. Yes, my last name really is Hurlbutt with 2 T's, and yes, I really am the brand manager for a company called CH2M HILL. That is unfortunately not a bad joke. That's my real life, and it builds a lot of character. So I'm going to let my slides come up. I think they're probably on their way. And in the meantime, I just want to say I'm from Denver. I'm actually a California gal who's now living in Denver, Colorado. I've been to Chicago maybe like once 20 years ago. This is a fantastic city. I love this city. So thank you for letting me be here and enjoy. I did a little jog seeing this morning on the Miracle Mile, and it was awesome. And I was glad I didn't have my wallet with me. So, I'm going to actually add 2 really quick housekeeping notes. First, I'm a mover and a shaker. I like to get in there, so I'm probably going to be walking around a little bit, and that'll help me to A, battle any nerves that I have, but B, make sure that this is really about you guys, because I want this to be about you guys. So let me know if you can't see me or can't hear me. I'll make sure maybe I'll come back on stage. And the second is, we have been talking about data and relationships today. What I'm really going to talk to you about is my story and the story of CH2M HILL. So there's not going to be a lot of talk around the data or the actual nitty-gritty of the process. However, I'm happy to talk about that with you. My LinkedIn and my Twitter account are up there on the cover slide. So feel free to friend me, feel free to ask me questions. And in fact, I'm going to try to breeze through this in about 35 minutes and leave plenty of time for questions. And if you want, you can tweet me the question while we're doing this so you can remember it. And if I don't get to that question for some reason, I promise that I will reply back and answer it later. So, do something awesome. I'm really glad that I got to go last, only because I really appreciate getting to hear what you guys care about. And the really exciting thing is I think we all care about something in common, which is brand. And I think that brand can literally save the world. When Wade talked this morning about the fact that only 13% of employees are engaged in their jobs, and that 24% of employees are actively disengaged, right? What are those people doing? They're spending 40 hours a week of their life. How many years of their life is that they're spending doing things that don't matter to them, that they're not pouring their heart and soul into, that they're not creating innovation around, that they're not utilizing to push the world forward? That, I think, is a purpose and a brand problem. And I think we can solve it by changing the conversation within an organization. And frankly, I think we have to solve it, because by 2018, there are going to be more millennials in the workforce than any other generation. And guess what? We care a lot about purpose. But before I get into that, and before I maybe create a chasm between the generations, I'm actually going to use an example of how I think purpose has always been at the center, the human center of organizations and what we're trying to do. It's one of my favorite stories. And it has a lot to do with employee culture. In early 1960s, JFK visited the NASA headquarters. And he walked up to a janitor and asked the janitor, "What are you doing here?" The janitor looked at JFK and said, "Well, haven't you heard? We're putting a man on the moon." And isn't that it, right? Isn't that amazing? When you can really get purpose and brand at the center of your organization, you can literally defy gravity. You can literally put a man on the moon. But in order to do that, you have to be a little bit brave, because you're going to have to change the way we talk about brand, because the current dialogue around brand and around talent brand isn't going to do the trick and isn't going to get you where you need to go. So we're going to do something awesome with each other today. And the first thing we're going to talk about is kind of this idea of talent versus marketing. So I've heard a lot of you guys say that you would really love to partner with marketing. Well, guess what? Marketing would love to partner with you too, because you have a very direct access and pipeline to people whose opinions of our company matter. Here's the problem though. Language is an important part of conversation, and this is divisive language. I think there's a reason there's divisive language. I think we call it talent brand because we've struggled to partner with each other, or maybe you don't even have a marketing department. So we've created our own little empires, right? If I have talent brand over here, then I can go do whatever I want and I don't have to ask marketing's permission, right? It's okay, you don't have to raise your hand, but you can admit in your mind that that might be something that you've done in the past, right? To try and control the dialogue. But here's the problem with that. What we're really trying to do is create experiences that matter and experiences that are consistent. If you're out there building a talent brand that doesn't actually match the culture that you have within your organization and the quality of the product, whatever that is, B2B, B2C, or otherwise, that you're selling, guess what? You are creating an authenticity gap. You are solving a recruitment problem to just potentially cause a retention problem, which isn't actually going to help you build partnership or increase your bottom line, right? Or get the right talent in the door and keep them in the door and build executive partnership. On the same side, from a marketing perspective, I can't go out there and sell, I'm B2B, I'm a service industry. CH2M HILL is an engineering company that sells, in fact, our own people and their ability to design solutions in the infrastructure and resource spaces. So if I am selling a product or trying to differentiate to my clients through my talent, but I can't get good talent in the door because I'm focusing too much on my corporate brand, guess what? All of a sudden I can't grow my top line. So this has to stop. Language is important, but we really have to divorce ourselves from this brand versus marketing talent versus marketing mindset. And if we do that, that's where a really powerful partnership can begin. And in fact, that's what we did at CH2M HILL. And I'll show you an example of that at the end of this, where corporate brand, which is what I am, so oops, sorry as I hit myself. I use my hands a lot, so that might happen more than once. I apologize in advance. Corporate marketing, me, and talent acquisition got together and actually were at the center of this revolution that is going on right now at the company. So the second step, after you've kind of addressed your language issues in dealing with changing a conversation, is shocking, wait for it, start having conversations, right? Start talking to people. I got put in this position, and fact is sometimes stranger than fiction. I'm an engineer. I actually designed for CH2M HILL first. I took count it one, brand marketing class ever in my entire life. I designed stormwater systems before this. So I had no idea how to make this happen. All I knew was that they'd given me this role of global brand manager. We had gone through an acquisitive strategy. We were trying to figure out how to unify all of these brands. We knew that our employees were feeling a little disengaged. And it was kind of like one of those things where you don't have any budget, you don't have a clear job description, and we're not really sure how you do it, but can you go solve all of this? Yeah, no problem. Well, where do we start? Start by having conversations. Talk to your people. Talk internally. Talk to marketing. Talk to IT. Talk to your executives. Talk to anyone who will listen and tell me, trust me, people want to talk. They're going to tell you all their problems. They're going to tell you what they hate, what they love, and everything in between. So start listening. And this is what I call the beginning of the journey of 1,000 conversations. Now, I'm going to preface this with, this is also a little bit hard because you're being a little bit vulnerable. And you're sitting there, and the problem with brand is often that everyone thinks they own it. So having a conversation about how you get to a consistent path forward on it and a partnered path forward on it can be hard because you've got to give up a little bit of ground. There are going to be plenty of people who ask you and look you in the eye and say, what business do you have talking to me about brand right now? This is my stuff. You're getting in on people's territories. Advice from the field. Know that that's going to happen. I'm a yoga teacher also. And this is where you take deep yogic breaths. Okay, great, thank you for your opinion, and you keep on taking the data and the information. Because what you're going to find is that everyone approaches brand from a slightly different perspective, and that's great. In fact, that's brilliant, because if you can listen well, and if you listen more than you talk, and you do your homework, you're actually starting to build that business case for how to get them all to give you their budgets, their time, their resources, and their energy to do something awesome for your company. So the bottom line there is start having conversations and do more listening than you do talking. As you do this listening, you're going to find that there are multiple brand masters at your company. Rather than try to jam something down their throats, what you're going to have to do is something I call compel collaboration. Convince people that it's in their best interest to be partnering with each other rather than fighting each other, or at worst, ignoring each other, right? So how do you do this? So I'll tell you what we did at CH2M HILL, and maybe you can do something similar, maybe you can do something different. We actually got all those people into the same room. So we had what we call a global brand summit, and we invited about 50 colleagues from every single department you see up there. Because in fact, every single one of those departments at CH2M HILL owns something that has to do with what I was my job description or lack thereof was charged with fixing. So we got them into the room, and something magical started to happen. Everyone started talking, and similar to the round tables, right, what you guys just did, it turns out we're all pretty human and we all have pretty similar problems. More importantly, what people started to find out is some of their actions were causing somebody else a headache. And at the end of the day, most of us aren't actually looking to cause each other headaches. So something really cool happened. We coalesced around 6 things that from a marketing perspective for the company, holistically, employee experience and client experience, were crucial to focus on. And those 6 things were content, both strategy as well as marketing, social media strategy, thought leadership, employee engagement, our website. Can you guess the 6th one? Not all together, guys. Sorry, I can't hear. Brand. It was brand. That was the 6th one. So without me having to say, hey, guys, I want us to invest in brand, I had already gone out and listened to everyone, and everyone had already told me that. Then they got into a room and heard each other say it. And guess what? I didn't have to do any of the work. I didn't have to tell anyone. They told us. Now, why is this really important? Because in order to make this work, you have to recognize the silos. You have to know that this is going on, and you have to be willing to defy them. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to get to partnership. And the reason that you have to defy the silos is because this becomes the foundation for your business case. Because next you got to sell executives. You have to change the conversation with executives. And what you've just effectively done by getting everyone in the same room and coalescing around the same problems is you've built brand ambassadors. And guess what, guys? Changing a conversation is way easier when you're not the only one doing it, right? So you've just gotten every one of those people to start bringing up the charge for you. You're not alone anymore, and that is kind of that momentum turning point. It's a pivot point within the case and the conversation that you're building. So then, your next challenge is you have to build the business case for it. This is where data becomes important, and this is where executives become important. So, like I mentioned, at CH2M HILL, we are a B2B service company. So we didn't have a baseline for any of our brand attributes, which was kind of hard, right? It's kind of hard when you don't have a baseline to go off of. So being an engineer, we kind of backwards engineered a business case. So the way we thought about it was, what do executives care about? What keeps them up at night? What are they at the end of the day, at the end of the year, trying to achieve? All routes at CH2M HILL kind of lead to what I call 4 key metrics. They're kind of keystone metrics, if you will. One is our top line, right? How much revenue are we bringing in the door on an annual basis? 2 is bottom line. How much of that revenue is dropping to profit? 3 is how do we get good talent in the door? How do we recruit good people? And 4, how do we keep good people in the door once we have them there? So top line, bottom line, recruitment, and retention were kind of the 4 things that no matter what executive you were dealing with, in some way, shape, or form, what they got graded on an annual basis related back to those 4 things. So what we did is we stopped and we said, okay, aren't these 4 things kind of related? And doesn't brand kind of play a central role, right? Theoretically, brand is trying to bring top line revenue and top talent in the door, right? And if all of a sudden we're partnering and we're not all trying to own our own little brand domains and marketing domains, aren't we in fact amplifying each other's messages? So every marketing dollar that we're spending is theoretically doing more, or we could even potentially do less marketing because we could use each other's content and messages a little more strategically. And if we've really done this correctly and authentically, and we've not just focused on the logo or the name or the color palette, but we've really focused on the culture that we're creating, aren't we going to be able to keep people in the door a little bit better? Which then theoretically will have bottom line impacts and top line impacts, and they'll be able to help us recruit. And you see where I'm going with this, right? You quickly get into a cyclical feedback cycle where you've got this web and you find out everything's in fact interrelated. So what we did is using that framework, as well as data that we got from client focus groups, from employee survey engagements, as well as interviews with executives. We built a case to change the conversation with executives. And the conversation, the crux of that conversation, was we made brand the yin to strategy's yang. It's not about fluff. It's not about a logo. It's about it's the lens through which you tell your strategy story. And if you can do that, if you can start to plant that seed in executives' heads and help them understand how having a consistent brand will help them to not only talk to their employees but their clients more effectively, they start to pay attention. They also start to give you money, which is awesome, because then you can get an agency and they're really helpful too. So this is what we did at CH2M HILL. We made brand the yin to strategy's yang to help change the conversation with executives, which is what let us get the agency on board, which is what really allowed us to take all this energy that we had been forming and really put it to good use, because at the end of the day, your own energy and passion can only take you so far before you have to get some experts in the door to help you. So the last conversation before I take questions that you have to change is the one in the mirror. There is a little voice inside all of us that is constantly sitting there going, I can't do that. It's not my job to do that. Why would anyone listen to me? I want you to tell that voice to shut it. It does you no good. It serves you zero. 3 years ago, no one would have thought that a 26-year-old pipsqueak engineer would be getting a Fortune 500 engineering company to start changing the way it tells its story, to go from a place of talking gadgets and services to about human purpose and progress. I didn't think that it could happen. But guess what? It is. And it started with the first step, and it started with looking in the mirror and saying, if not you, then who? If you want this for your organization, if you believe this, if you believe that brand and purpose need to come back into organizations across the world, you need to start that journey. Because guess what? This is in no one's job descriptions. This is not how any company is currently set up, but it is possible. Be the hero in your own story. Be the hero in your company's story. I promise you can be, and I promise it's worth it. Now, I also mentioned before we get into the questions of all of it, that we started this conversation around how can talent and marketing partner together, and how did we do that at CH2M HILL? And I mentioned that, in fact, that's how we started our journey. We partnered with TADC, which is what we call our talent acquisition team. Marketing and TADC partnered at CH2M HILL. And we actually combined our discovery phase of the brand effort with an immediate need that our talent acquisition team had for getting new talent in the door in the Middle East and the UK. And what we did was we allowed that discovery phase and a general direction of where the brand was going and what we thought was going to lead to our brand strategy framework. We allowed that to influence the ads and how they were put together. And I'm going to read to you, if I can read it. No, I can't read it. That's okay, though. What they basically say at their crux is, and by the way, when these came out, these got us a 300% year over year for that time period hit on our careers website when we launched these. And it was aligned with the new brand, and it was as good and useful for talking to our clients as it was to talking to recruits, as talking to our own employees. But the idea here of what we're talking about is we're begging the question, we're daring the industry to look at itself beyond just an engineer who crunches numbers. Are you an adventurer, a collaborator, a creator? What do you do that actually creates foundations of human progress, that propels the world forward? And that is a message, and that's an idea, and that's a purpose that resonates as strongly with our clients as it does with our people. And thanks to a partnership between marketing and talent acquisition, where we were both willing to put down our mantles of corporate versus talent brand and start to change the conversation at our company, we've started to be able to do that not just within CH2M HILL, but within the industry as a whole. So with that, I will take some questions, and I'll go back on stage for this. And like I said, you can go ahead and tweet me anything you want, or LinkedIn message me, or whatever. So not all at once, guys. Can't answer everyone's question at once. It's awkward. Yeah. Oh. He's running. He's such a good runner.
Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Thanks for the presentation, first off. That was great. Second question is, I really like what you did, on a macro level there with getting involved in kind of the overall brand. As far as kind of a micro level, getting marketing and talent acquisition to work together. How do you feel about getting marketing involved with, the job descriptions and the actual copy that is sent out to candidates to try to get a higher conversion ratio?
That's an excellent point. And we, in fact, I think at this table over here, we're kind of talking about how do you share content across departments, especially content that you're going to put out there. And I think that's really the crux of it is content. What pieces of who you are as a company are pretty central or flexibly usable across other departments? So job descriptions are a great one. One of the things that we're starting to do, and I should mention, all this stuff is in the process of being rolled out. It's about 18 more months till you'll see the transformed CH2M HILL, but one of the things that we're attacking early is the language that we use in a lot of our copy, including job descriptions, our about us, and some of our ad spaces. We'll start to see, like you just saw, those are some of the areas where we'll really try to infuse the energy and the heart of who we are into it to use it as a compelling piece.
Okay, it works. Thank you for that. So I know you said you're still kind of working on the roadmap for the next 18 months and rolling out your employer brand, but do you guys have a strategy in place for how you're actually going to then educate your employees and mobilize them? And if so, what is that?
Yeah, thank you. It's like I asked you to ask that question, because this is actually, I think, the coolest part about how we're doing it. So I should also mention, a lot of other things kind of align or don't align for you in all of this stuff. And one of the things that was really nice that aligned for me is that my executive sponsor for the brand effort actually in the middle of it became our new CEO. So that was really helpful. I should mention, full disclosure, right? Okay. I still think it's possible, and it would have been possible, but it was extremely helpful. And one of the nice things about that is she's kind of my own personal hero, Jackie Hinman. If you don't know who she is, go look her up. She's actually the first female CEO of an engineering company of our size, which is pretty badass, excuse my French, if I do say so myself. And anyway, she actually did the last rebrand of the company back in the 90s. And what she had mentioned to us and really harped on us about was that they had revealed the visual identity, the visual components, because that's really the part that people associate strongly with your brand. Before they had focused on the employee engagement and education portions of it and the behaviors around it. So the visual ID, the logo, became all of the conversation and not becoming that company. So what we're actually doing in light of that differently is this year in particular, so we have our brand language and our strategy all laid out. We're not doing any of the actual big reveal type stuff until 2015. And 2014 is going to be spent exclusively on getting our own people to behave this way. So they're actually, I have a diagram that I don't have with me. If you think about it this way, values, there's been a lot of discussion around values and culture and et cetera. So the way we look at it at CH2M HILL is your values, which are actually part of a brand strategy. The heart of your brand strategy is your purpose and your values. Values drive your actions, right? And your actions are your behaviors. And your behaviors and your values are supported by your culture, which is the enabling components, right? It's the policies, it's the reward and recognition, it's how you demonstrate and actually allow people to act the way they're supposed to act. So what we're doing is we're taking those brand values and we're going to engage the company in helping tell us what are the behaviors that support that, And then how do we as a company partner with HR among other groups to figure out how we develop the culture? What do we need to change about our culture to really allow that to become part of it? So in fact, the reality is the conversation with our employees is not one about brand, it's one about culture and about who you want to be. The brand stuff is kind of what we're doing behind the scenes as the master manipulators, if you will. That help? Okay. There's one over here, I think.
Thank you. So can you walk us through a little bit more detail in regards to really some of the barriers that you had to remove? Because clearly with that larger scale cross-functional group and different mindsets, and especially in engineering, how did you realistically remove those barriers?
Lots of different ways. You're fighting, so I guess the first piece of advice I'd give is recognize you're fighting a multiple front battle, a multiple front war. So you're gonna have to use a lot of different tactics to kind of tackle those barriers with. I would say talent acquisition was the first one, was getting over this idea of talent versus corporate brand and really just start to talk about brand, and that we were all trying to create good experiences for our clients and good experiences for our employees. Luckily with that one, I actually found that talent acquisition was a willing partner in our instance. In fact, Ryan Cook, who LinkedIn has since stolen from me, who was my talent acquisition director at the time, was a really great partner in all of that. So that was kind of a personality match, if you will. We have, the way we're organized, and this is, I think, inherently the problem at most organizations. In fact, I've heard questions along this line of, I've got all these different product lines, and we call that a house of brands, if you will. So it's kind of like each product or line within your organization kind of has its own brand that falls under that master company. And with that is a lot of challenge because there's a lot of territorialism around it. So I know it seems so simple, but the first step is to go in and have a conversation with somebody and understand what goals they're trying to accomplish. More often than not, you're trying to accomplish very simple and similar goals. So it's just a matter of how do you reframe that in their mind to help them with it. Data was another challenge. So how do you go out and actually capture rich data around a lot of this stuff? And we had to, in order to do that, we actually had to commission a survey with some of our clients to really get a feel for some of the things that we're known for and that matter to them. And I would say the other big barrier for us, which is just kind of interesting the way, and this is changing about us as we speak, was direct access to our clients to validate some of these hypotheses and strategy and identity elements was a challenge. So really partnering close with client service managers and being able to work with them to get access to their clients and get direct feedback and test some of this stuff was certainly a large challenge. So, but partnership is kind of the name of the game. And knowing this doesn't happen overnight, so know you're playing the long game too, and be willing and think strategically about that. Like, what battles are you willing to lose in order to win the war? That's the other thing I would recommend. Because some of the barriers you're just gonna say, and I've done that multiple times, is say, not gonna fight this battle. I'm gonna let you have this win because it's gonna build goodwill, and I'm gonna get you, and that's more important, your relationship is more important to me than winning this particular ad, for instance. Thanks. Any other questions?
So I really like what you said about the 4 things that executives really care about: top line, bottom line, recruit, retain. And I wrote those down, and as I was looking at it, I drew a cloud around top line, bottom line, because at my company, that's the only thing that factors into the way that they're compensated. So my question to you is it different there at CH2M HILL? And if not, how do you overcome the fact that you're getting people to do something that they don't get compensated for?
You're so astute. In fact, all roads really lead to top line and bottom line. And recruitment and retention entered in there largely because we partnered with TADC, which had such a people focus, which I really appreciated because I'm a pretty people-oriented person. And I think that's how, in fact, is how businesses are made, driven, succeed. So that's a personal bias. The other part that really contributed to that is we are actually an employee-owned company. We're actually the first or second largest employee-owned company out there, and in the U.S. And for us, because I think by virtue of that, we have a little more flexibility to include people into the equation than you might have at other organizations. To that point, though, what we were strategic about is, and what we are in the process of changing the conversation around. So many conversations are changing, guys. Isn't this great? It's a theme. One of the conversations that we're changing is, how do you look at your people in terms of capital, right? And how important are they to driving that top and bottom line, right? Because look at retention. So you can look at retention and just say that's a bottom line problem, because you then have to go recruit for somebody, and that means training, et cetera, recruitment costs. You could also look at that and say, how many client relationships for us did they take with them, right? And guess what? Within our industry, we just kind of horse trade back and forth with each other. So they just went over to our competitor and took that client relationship with them. That's a huge top line impact for us. And I think as we started to draw those lines out and we started to find specific examples of where that was happening, that was really compelling to getting the recruitment and retention criteria on there in equal footing with top and bottom line. Thanks. No more? Going once? Going twice? Okay, tweet me, LinkedIn me, whatever you need. Happy to talk more. Great job.
Wow, Kasey, that was fantastic. So exciting to hear about the innovative ways that CH2M HILL and you specifically are leading the change. And I think what's really great is that we have a huge diversity of size of company, type of company in this room today. And I think the things that you talked about and the themes are relevant for all of us. And it starts with relationships and conversations and listening, and using that data where appropriate to get everyone on the same page. So thank you for really bringing it all together for us. So we're going to end our time together. I mentioned that I was going to share a few more details on that customer conference that I expect to see all of you at in just a few months. So we are going to be hosting Talent Connect, which I mentioned is a 2-day event. This year, we're bringing it back to its roots.